The border world always smelled faintly of ozone and hot metal, like a ship's engine room grafted onto a dusty frontier town. Jack Harmon's garage fit right in three, rattling fans fighting a losing battle against the heat, while he hunched over a Praxian communicator, designed for 6 fingers and exactly 0 human patience. He talked while he worked. Not to himself, but to the lilac-skinned kid, perched on a scuffed stool, Lyrie, who listened the way. Only a child on the edge of wonder does. Bypass this node. Reroute to the secondary. And you teach a stubborn machine to speak human, he said. Solder, blooming silver in the dim light. Lyrie's pointed ears flicked with every spark. When he handed her a puzzle cube that unfolded into glowing geometry, she held it carefully. Like a lantern in fog. For a man who'd left the military to be alone with broken things, her quiet companionship had become the best part of his day. On this planet, humans were still rare enough to draw glances. But Lyrie never stared the way markets did. She came. She watched. She passed tools with solemn pride. When the sun angled low and the garage stretched long shadows like a yawn, she would slip away, hair catching the light like a ribbon of violet smoke. Jack would call, "Same time tomorrow," and she would nod without turning. The routine felt sturdy, until it wasn't. 3 days passed. No light step at the door. No small hand presenting a plasma cutter like treasure. By the 4th evening, worry collected behind Jack's ribs like a storm he refused to name. On the 5th, it broke. He scrubbed off grease, pulled on the clean navy shirt that made him feel passable among the elegant, and walked into the Nalarian quarter where the stone pathways held the sky and the buildings refracted sunset into 1,000 softened blades. Border worlds make their own etiquette. You don't press when the gardener turns wary, or when the merchant smiles and offers nothing. Jack kept asking anyway. Each polite refusal polishing his fear into something sharp. He was turning back when 2 Nalarian women drifted past like music. Poor Lyrie. Accident by the old conduits. Optic nerves. One murmured. A phrase like a dropped plate. Lady Atara must be devastated, said the other. The name struck true. A life he'd come to rely on had tilted on its axis. He thanked them, though they hadn't meant to help, and went home with his jaw set. He didn't sleep much. Instead, he mapped a problem onto a workbench. If a culture built on vision lost it, could you speak to the brain in a new language? He sketched a visor that wasn't a camera but a translator, fusing thermal gradients, sonic returns, and local EM flux into nerve-kind signals the mind could learn to read. He bartered for a wafer-thin sensor lattice from a Dralaxian pilot, pried a phase array out of an old mining scanner, and milled the frame from a soft, resilient alloy he'd once used for shock mounts. He kept the profile low and the weight featherlight. Kids grow. So the bands had to flex, and remember, coffee and determination did the rest. By dawn of the 4th day, a prototype lay on the mat, sleek, imperfect, and humming with possibility. "Hang on, kid," he said to the empty room. "We're not done." The door chime answered him. Lyrie stood in the threshold with a tall Nalarian man whose posture said steward, not soldier, and whose eyes said he'd rather be anywhere else. Lyrie's gaze did not meet Jack's. It drifted, clouded and unfixed, searching for the gravity of his voice. "Jack," she asked her first word to him, small as a pulse. He crouched until their hands found each other. "Right here." The steward introduced himself as Vaughn of House Talon and made it clear the child had insisted. Jack didn't care about court protocols. He cared about restoring a radius of belonging to a world that had gone dark. He showed the visor. Explained. Not repair but bypass. Not sight, but space. And how the brain could be taught a new cartography of shadows and warmth. Vaughn's skepticism eased into curiosity. Lyrie's hope lit the room. Jack fitted the band over her temples, engaged the power cell, and waited. For a breath, nothing. Then she startled. Breath, hitching as if a window had opened. "It's different," she said slowly. "Light and dark. Shapes. The big table. The stool. You're warmer." Jack laughed once. Unsteady and grateful. As she stepped around a toolbox without touching it, independence began as a shuffle and resolved into a walk. Vaughn watched with the measured awe of someone taught not to show it. "Remarkable," he said then. "Lower house Talon will not fail to notice. Noticing is what courts do best. But for a stolen hour?" Jack let that warning drop to the floor like an unused tool. He tightened bands in millimeters. He set a training mode that exaggerated contrast to accelerate learning and promised to tune it as her brain adapted. He told Lyrie that seeing differently was still seeing, and that difference could be an advantage when the world insisted on sameness. She traced the edge of the puzzle cube by feel and sight that wasn't, smiling like sunrays after rain. "Thank you," she said. And it filled the garage more than any fan ever had. Outside the garage, the border quarter breathed its rough symphony vendors, hawking spice steam buns beneath flickering neon. A trio of miners, arguing exchange rates with a Praxian clerk. The distant thump of cargo skiffs, bleeding into the sky. Jack walked Vaughn out to the threshold and caught, for the first time, the cultural geometry that had always cradled Lyrie-Nalarian streets, curved to sightlines. Door chimes were tuned to directional hearing. Classroom windows were designed to paint information onto walls in color language, first and sound second. A people shaped by light would feel a blindness like exile. He swallowed against the thought and turned back to the work that would make exile less absolute. The visor wasn't magic. It was a beginning. Over the next 2 hours, Jack coached Lyrie through a simple calibration ritual he invented on the spot and presented as a game, moving a bead along a thread without seeing the string. Tapping a rhythm when a thermal pulse brushed her palm. Naming a direction when a soft echo pulse returned from a dangling metal plate. She adapted fast, the way kids do when adults get out of the way. Vaughn stood by with a ledger's mind but did not interrupt. At last, Lyrie circled the bench, located the tiny brass bolt Jack had forgotten, and placed it in his hand with ceremonial solemnity. "Assistant," he said, and she grinned. Jack had been a soldier long enough to recognize the shape of consequences arriving from the horizon. Vaughn's warning wasn't theater. House Talon, Lord Talon, would claim both the honor and the narrative, because courts live on stories as much as on law. Jack cleaned the bench and kept the design notes deliberately messy. The way a mechanic's work should be, when it's honest. If the court came looking for a miracle, he'd give them engineering. If they came looking for a breach of protocol, he'd give them a child who could cross a room alone. One of those would be harder to prosecute in the court of anybody's conscience. For Lyrie, the world had edges again. She drifted toward the doorway, paused, tilted her head as if the light itself had whispered, then turned back and touched her forehead lightly to Jack's arm, in a gesture he had not seen before and would not forget. Vaughn cleared his throat, a steward's reminder that ceremonies waited elsewhere, but even he softened by a degree. "On the way out," he said, "there are rules about interference." Jack nodded. "And there are rules about children." They left him with a quiet garage and a promise of attention that felt like a storm cell building over the quarter. He closed up early. Not because he was afraid, but because the day had asked for reverence. He sat on the stool Lyrie had claimed, and let the silence cool into something like relief. Somewhere behind the quarter's glass-bright skyline, a house decided how to answer what a human had done. Somewhere closer, A girl who had learned a new way to see might be pressing her palm to a wall to feel the hum of a home that had never needed to be mapped before. On frontier worlds, belonging is a verb. Tonight, it had shape. Tomorrow, it would have consequences. When the knock finally came 4 days later, it wasn't a knock. It was a hiss of the door, and the mirrored gleam of elite armor, 4 guards and iridescent plates that shifted color when the room breathed. Jack set his wrench down. The lead guard's voice carried ceremony like a drawn blade. "Jack Harmon, your presence is required at House Talon." He asked if this was about Lyrie. The answer was the sort that means yes without offering comfort. "The child is well." He washed his hands, traded his gray work shirt for the clean navy again, and left the pulse pistol under the bench, because bringing a tool you won't use is how you make a situation worse. They formed a square around him in the street and marched him through the market's side-eye and into the quarter's light. He kept his back straight and his eyes moving, cataloging sightlines and exits, the way old training never stops teaching you to do. The house rose ahead like a captured constellation, water spirals defying gravity, bioluminescent trees, bowing to a music he couldn't hear. Jack thought of the Visor learning a new language and hoped the court could, too. He didn't let himself imagine outcomes as the atrium swallowed him. Soldiers took positions at the corners of the world, and an old man with indigo skin and robes stitched from light circled Jack like a star chart waiting to be read. "You interfered," the man said, and the word landed like a verdict. But then Lyrie ran in, perfect in her new grace, and collided with the human who had chosen to care. "Gratitude," said a new voice that walked like nightfall. And Lady Atara stepped through a door, the way a secret becomes a vow. A celebration was announced for moonrise. Gratitude had rules here. Jack bowed like Atara had just taught him once. Exactly deep enough. Exactly brave enough. And when the guards turned to escort him deeper into the house, he glanced back at the doorway, half expecting the garage to be there like an anchor. It wasn't. That was the point. He had crossed a line made of light. The rest would follow. The journey to House Talon felt like crossing from reality into myth. The streets of the Nalarian Quarter curved in liquid geometry, every surface catching and bending light until it felt like walking through a prism. The 4 armored guards flanked Jack in silence, their iridescent plating shifting between shades of ocean and storm. He kept pace, aware of how out of place he looked, human sweat and worn boots, against the ceremonial perfection of an alien noble escort. They entered through gates taller than starship hangars, carved with flowing script that shimmered like molten silver. Inside, the air cooled and sweetened, humming faintly as if the entire estate breathed. Water spiraled upward in transparent columns, defying gravity before falling again in delicate curtains. Light moved in patterns that weren't random, a coded rhythm of house prestige and living art. Jack caught himself whispering, "You people don't just build, you choreograph." Silence. The lead guard replied, though not harshly. Jack obeyed. He was led into a vast atrium, its floor a mirror of dark glass. Waiting there, framed by hovering lanterns that traced slow orbits around him, stood Lord Talon, older than Jack expected, indigo-skinned, eyes sharp as a welder's spark. His robes emitted faint constellations of moving light, family history encoded into fashion. The guard stopped a precise 3 paces away and bowed. Jack hesitated, then mirrored them awkwardly. "So," Lord Talon said, voice low but resonant, "the human mechanic who defied custom and touched what was forbidden." Jack straightened. "Sir, I didn't mean. You interfered." Talon interrupted, circling him like a slow comet. "You performed unsanctioned treatment upon a noble child. Do you know the punishment for such trespass? Jack's pulse quickened. I do now. Death, said the old lord, with a cruel softness. The guards shifted. Spears, whispering against armor. Jack exhaled. Then I'd die, knowing I did the right thing. The silence afterward felt like standing inside a vacuum. Then, unexpectedly, Talon's lips curved into something between amusement and respect. Courage or foolishness? Often the same thing. He murmured, You gave sight to my granddaughter. Jack frowned. Not exactly. Just a tool, a different kind of seeing. Distinctions are the currency of philosophers. To a child who believed her world lost, it is a miracle. A sound interrupted them light. Quick footsteps on glass. Grandfather. You promised you wouldn't scare him, Lyri's voice. Confident now. Filled the hall. She ran straight to Jack. Guided perfectly by the visor's hum. She collided with his legs. And he caught her reflexively. The gesture, simple. Human. Universal. Lord Talon's Gaza softened. The predator replaced by a patriarch. Very well. Little one. I have tested his heart. He has passed. From behind the cascading water emerged another presence, tall, graceful, and haloed by indigo light. Lady Atara. Her gown moved like night sky across skin. Her eyes glowed faintly silver. Rare, even among her kind. Mother of the child. The steward Vaughn announced. Jack bowed automatically. Atara inclined her head. But her gaze lingered on him, curious. Analytical. Almost amused. You built hope from spare parts, she said. House Talon is in your debt. We will repay it tonight. I don't need a reward, Jack said quickly. Refusing honor is its own offense. Atara replied, voice melodic but edged. To decline would shame us both. Her words weren't a threat, they were instruction. The first of many. Within hours, the estate became a machine of preparation. Servants moved like disciplined photons, setting tables of floating crystal and banners that glowed with familial sigils. Jack was measured by quiet tailors whose fingers moved faster than thought. When he glanced toward a mirror, the reflection startled him. Formal attire of deep navy, lined with silver veins. A nod to his humanity threaded with Nalarian aesthetic. Atara appeared again as he adjusted the unfamiliar collar. You wear it well, she said, eyes flicking up to meet his, though you stand like a soldier, not a guest. Habit, Jack admitted. I used to fix engines under fire. Then you'll manage dinner conversation with our nobles. He laughed despite himself. What's the etiquette, Bo? Don't touch anything glowing. Atara's lips curved slightly. Close. Narians express respect through light. Lower your eyes when addressed by elders. And accept gifts with both hands. Palms visible. It shows you hide no weapon. Good rule, he said. Humans should borrow that one. Perhaps you should borrow more than that, she murmured. Our society values patience. Yours, improvisation. Sometimes passions kills. Improvisation saves. Jack countered. Atara's gaze sharpened challenge met and matched. And sometimes improvisation causes wars. He nodded. I've seen both. The conversation hung between them like static before a storm. Atara moved closer. Her scent, faintly metallic. Like air after lightning. Lyri has told me of your garage, she said softly. Of puzzles that bloom with light. You taught her to see beyond what is given. I wish more of my kind remembered that lesson. Jack smiled faintly. Guess we both got something out of it. She found purpose. Atara said, And I, curiosity. Their eyes met, and for a long heartbeat, the universe narrowed to that point of contact, human breath meeting alien composure. Then she turned away, recovering her poise. "You will sit beside me at the feast," she said, brisk again. "You are to be presented as Talon Ven, friend of the house. It is unprecedented." He blinked. "Friend of the house? I thought I was on trial." "Trials and honors are separated by the outcome." Atara replied. "Yours has already been decided." She gestured toward the window, where moonrise bled across the horizon. The light refracted through the estate's crystalline walls, turning every surface into silver flame. "Our celebrations begin when the first moon touches the water," she said. "When it does, speak little, listen much, and follow my lead." Jack hesitated. "And if I make a mistake?" Atara smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Not political. Then they will forgive you, because I will ask them to, and because they are curious to see what a human does next." She turned to leave, pausing at the doorway. "One more thing," she said, glancing back. "When you stand beside me, they will assume what they wish. Let them. Sometimes appearances protect truth better than honesty ever could." He wasn't sure what that meant, but he nodded. Understood. As she departed, he caught his reflection again, the mechanic who once hid behind engines now polished into something resembling nobility. He wondered if the reflection would last until morning. The music began, first low hums rising from hidden resonators that made the floors vibrate like the inside of a living instrument. Lyrie darted past him, already dressed in ceremonial silver. Visor integrated into her headpiece so elegantly that no one could call it medical again. She looked radiant, proud. Jack's throat tightened. "You'll do fine," she told him, the child comforting the adult. He laughed softly. "Guess I've got the best teacher." When Atara reappeared in her full regalia, the hall's light bent toward her. She extended an arm. The gesture, both command and invitation. Jack took it carefully. The contact electric through layers of formal cloth. Together, they stepped into the grand hall as hundreds of eyes turned their way. The air thickened with ritual expectation. Atara leaned close enough that he could feel the cool brush of her breath. "Remember," she whispered, "everything here is performance. Even sincerity." Jack nodded. "Then I'll try not to miss my cue." The moonlight caught her smile brief. "Secret. Dangerous. See that you don't." Talon Ven. And as the hall rose in a shimmer of applause and curiosity, Jack realized that somewhere between fixing an alien child's vision and standing beside her mother in a room full of royalty, he'd crossed another invisible boundary, one that led not to danger, but to something far more unpredictable, something that felt a lot like destiny. The grand hall of House Talon unfolded like a cathedral of living light. Dozens of floating globes drifted beneath the vaulted ceiling, shedding a slow cascade of luminous pollen that changed hue with the rhythm of the music. Every surface shimmered columns of translucent crystal, floors rippling faintly with liquid reflections. Banners breathing with embedded constellations that told the house's lineage in moving stars. Jack felt small and impossibly conspicuous. A single human heartbeat amid the orchestrated grace of another civilization. Atara guided him through the crowd with an ease that came from generations of court ritual. Wherever she passed, nobles bowed just enough to show deference, their eyes sliding to Jack with naked curiosity. The air smelled of spiced nectar and ozone. The music shifted tempo as if responding to their steps. "Remember," she murmured, without looking at him. "Pause. When the drums cut. That is when introductions begin." He nodded. though his pulse hammered louder than any drum. At the dais, Lord Talon raised a hand, and the entire hall dimmed to twilight. A single column of light fell on Jack and Atara. "Tonight," the old lord intoned, "we honor a being from beyond our bloodline, one whose actions returned light to our house. Jack Harmon of Earth Neal." Jack glanced at Atara. She gave the barest nod. He dropped to one knee on the mirror floor, the weight of every gaze pressing down. Lord Talon stepped forward, holding a pendant of teardrop crystal that pulsed in synchrony with the hall's ambient glow. "By the right of debt and gratitude," the patriarch said, voice echoing in perfect resonance with the resonators above, "I name you Talon Ven, friend of the house, protected by its banner, honored by its code." A murmur swept the assembly. Shock, dissent, awe. No human had ever been granted such standing. The pendant was lowered onto Jack's neck. Its cool surface warmed instantly to his skin. Synchronizing to his heartbeat, the light in the hall flared white, then settled into a steady, rhythmic pulse that seemed to accept him. "Rise, Talon Ven," said the patriarch. Jack stood. He expected applause. What he got instead was silence, dense, measured, political, then scattered claps. The sound of courtesy rather than celebration. In the front row, a tall Nalarian male with silver-lined armor and eyes like frozen glass watched him with open contempt. Atara followed his gaze. "Lord Nevin," she whispered. "House Prayton, our oldest rival. He will not forgive this. Good to know who not to sit next to." Jack muttered. The corner of her mouth twitched. "You may find his company unavoidable." Dinner unfolded in layered rituals. Servants presented dishes that shimmered with inner light nutrient gels arranged like constellations. Meats marinated in liquid starlight. Fruit that glowed when sliced. Jack followed Atara's lead. Exactly left hand steady, right hand open, eyes lowered when addressed. To his surprise, the sequence felt almost like field drills, precision under scrutiny. The nobles questioned him cautiously. "Human mechanics rely on improvisation," asked one scholar lord, tasting the word as if it were exotic spice. "Improvisation keeps you alive when the manual doesn't match reality," Jack said. A few laughed politely. Most didn't. Another asked if humans truly lived without collective telepathy. "Mostly," Jack replied. "We just talk. Sometimes even listen." That drew genuine amusement. For a moment, the ice cracked. Across the table, Nevin's stare remained fixed. Calculating. Jack caught whispers, "Talon Ven. Undeserved. Dangerous precedent." He focused on his plate, on breathing evenly, on the warmth of Atara's arm, occasionally brushing his sleeve. When the formal portion ended, the hall shifted to celebration. Music swelled. Bioluminescent ribbons drifted down like auroras captured indoors. Lyrie bounded toward him, silver dress glinting, visor now integrated seamlessly into a circlet that made her look almost royal. "Jack, you did it. You're one of us now," she exclaimed, throwing her arms around him. Laughter rippled through the hall's shock at a child's boldness, quickly softened by her joy. Even Lord Talon's severe expression eased. "Let the House Talon rejoice," he declared. The musicians struck up a new rhythm. Faster, brighter. Atara leaned close. "You handled them well," she murmured. "Mostly because you translated their landmines," Jack said. "Translation is a kind of diplomacy," she replied. "And diplomacy is war conducted politely." "Then what's this?" he asked, glancing around at the glowing hall. "Peace pretending it can last," she said. They moved through the crowd together. Fielding, congratulations, and veiled barbs. Jack began to recognize patterns. Every compliment hit a test. Every smile measured his responses. He met each one with the same grounded humor that had gotten him through countless outposts and broken engines. Somewhere amid the alien grandeur, he found his footing. Later, under the pretense of air and quiet, Atara guided him to a high balcony, overlooking gardens that pulsed with bioluminescent flora. Below them, water streamed through transparent channels like veins of light. The music softened. "Distant now. You have impressed them," she said, folding her hands along the railing. "And unsettled them. Both are valuable. Unsettling people's kind of my brand," Jack replied. Atara laughed softly. "Your brand may change the balance of two houses." He turned toward her. "You really believe that?" "I believe some ripples become tides." She faced him, and the cool glow from the garden reflected in her silver-flecked eyes. "You gave my daughter back her world. Jack Harmon, you gave my house a story it needed. And you reminded me," her voice faltered slightly, "that wonder is not extinct." He searched her face. "Atara." She took a breath that trembled just enough to betray feeling. "Among my people, gratitude is formal, but I find formality insufficient." Before he could respond, the moment was shattered by a sudden sound, a frantic voice from the doorway. "My lady," it was Vaughn. The steward. Pale, even by Nalarian standards. "Forgive the intrusion, but the young mistress she is missing." Atara espun. The elegance of court evaporating into pure maternal instinct. "What do you mean missing?" "Her attendant found her chambers empty an hour ago. The visor is gone as well." Jack's chest tightened. "Gone, as in?" Vaughn's voice dropped. Sensors detected unauthorized transport activity in the East Garden. The signature matches Praeton technology. Atara's composure returned in a single heartbeat. Cold and sharp. "Alert all guards. Seal the estate. And inform Lord Talon immediately." Vaughn bowed and vanished into motion. Jack followed, as Atara strode down the corridor, her gown trailing like a storm front. The music of the gala continued behind them. Oblivious. Within moments, they entered the security chamber, a circular room filled with holographic projections and humming consoles. Lord Talon stood at its center, surrounded by guards and data streams. "Someone has breached our perimeter," he said grimly. "House Praeton leaves its fingerprints even when it denies them." A new hologram flickered to life. Lord Nevin's face, smug and illuminated from below. "My dear Talon," he said smoothly, "I trust your festivities proceed adequately. Return my granddaughter." Talon snapped. Nevin's smile widened. "Such accusations wound me. I merely wish to examine the remarkable technology your human has produced. Bring him to the boundary marker within the hour alone, and perhaps the child will be returned unharmed." "If you touch her," Atara began, voice low and shaking with fury. "The child is unharmed." Nevin interrupted. "For now." The connection cut. The chamber erupted into movement. Orders shouted. Guard dispatched. "I'll go," Jack said. Atara grabbed his arm. "You can't. It's a trap." "I know," he said, already calculating. "That's why I'm the one who should walk into it." Lord Talon studied him with a long, measuring look. "Perhaps it is time to see if human audacity equals its reputation. You have the house's support. Take what you need." Jack nodded once. "Then I'll need a ride to my workshop." As they turned to leave, Atara caught his sleeve, eyes blazing silver. "Return to me," she whispered fiercely. He met her chaza, steady and sure. Count on it. The faintest tremor crossed her lips, half fear. Half promise. What we began tonight, we'll finish, he said. They held each other's eyes for a heartbeat longer. The unspoken, alive between them, then separated duty, drawing sharper lines than either desire or decorum could erase. And as Jack followed the guards out into the night, past corridors humming with tension, past fountains that glowed with the house's shifting colors, one thought pulsed louder than all others. He'd built a device to help one child see. Now he'd have to use every scrap of human instinct to keep her alive. The border forest lay between House Talon's prismatic spires and the barren plateau claimed by House Prayton. At night, the trees emitted faint, bioluminescent threads that hung like constellations caught in branches. Jack had always liked this place, the only stretch of quiet between the hum of civilization and the raw whisper of wilderness. Tonight, that quiet felt wrong. Too still. Too expectant. In his workshop an hour earlier, he'd worked with the precision of panic disguised as focus. Every motion deliberate. Every thought running in tactical parallel. He stripped down the components of a defunct drone, scavenged a capacitor from an atmospheric regulator, and soldered together 3 pieces of improvised salvation: an EMP pulse grenade disguised as a scanning tool, a sphere of aerosolized titanium dust for visual cover, and a thermal visor overlay synced to his wrist display. Around him, the 2 Talon guards assigned to escort him watched in uneasy silence. Your species approaches problems with violence, one finally observed. Jack didn't look up. We approach problems with creativity. Violence is just creativity under pressure. When he finished, he holstered the makeshift tools and slung a small pack over his shoulder. He'd changed back into his mechanic's uniform gray. Grease-scarred. Anonymous. Tell Lady Atara, he said, locking eyes with the senior guard, that I'm following the plan. She will not like this, the guard warned. Good, Jack replied. Means she'll be ready for the worst. Now, standing beneath the ghostlight trees, he saw the silhouette of the ancient boundary marker, a massive stone pillar etched with twin sigils, one glowing faint blue for Talon, the other a dim, angry red for Prayton. Beside it waited Nevin, robes trimmed in cold gold, flanked by 3 armored soldiers. Their weapons gleamed with the faint shimmer of active power cores, and behind them Lyrie. She stood still but proud, chin lifted, the visor gone from her face. Her eyes, pale and unfocused, caught stray glimmers of light. Jack, she called, when she heard him step onto the clearing's gravel. He raised both hands. Voice steady. Easy. Kid. I'm here. Ah. Nevin said, stepping forward. His smile was the kind predators wear before they test a trap. The human mechanic, bold enough to face a noble of Prayton alone. I almost admire that. Almost is all I need. Jack said dryly. Let her go. You have the visor. That's what this is about, isn't it? Not just the device. Nevin purred. The mind that built it. Imagine what your crude ingenuity could accomplish in civilized hands. Civilized people don't kidnap children. Nevin's smile didn't falter. Philosophy is a luxury for those with leverage. Give me the design. In return, I may let you and the girl live. Jack reached into his pocket, drawing out a small data crystal. Everything you need's on this. Nevin gestured for one of his guards to retrieve it. The armored figure approached, suspicion lowering his weapon, but not his guard. Jack extended the crystal, then let it slip from his fingers at the last second. Oops. As the guard stooped to pick it up, Jack's thumb pressed a hidden stud on the scanner. In his other hand, The pulse it released was invisible, but the results were immediate. Every powered system, in a 15-meter radius, shuddered and went dark. Armor plating dimmed. Weapon cores sputtered out. And Nevin's ornate shield flickered into nothing. What Nevin began. "Emp," Jack said. Already moving. Crude, but effective. The metallic sphere left his hand and burst mid-air with a low whump, spreading a dense, glittering smoke. It wasn't random cover. Each particle reflected thermal energy just enough to confuse Nalarian eyesight while leaving heat signatures readable on Jack's modified display. Through the haze, he saw the guards' shapes as orange ghosts. Jack sprinted forward. One guard tried to raise a weapon too slow. Jack dropped low, sweeping the alien's legs and driving his elbow into the exposed joint behind the knee. The armor cracked. The figure collapsed. He reached Lyrie in 3 heartbeats. "Hey, little one," he said. Breath tight. "Time to go." She clutched at his sleeve. "I can't see." "Then we fix that." From his pocket, he drew the visor shielded in an EMP-resistant pouch and slipped it over her eyes. "Power cells hot," he murmured. "Close your eyes. Breathe. And trust me." The visor came alive with a faint hum. Lyrie gasped, hands fluttering until they found his face. "You glow again," she whispered. "That's the idea." Behind them, Nevin roared, his voice cracking with disbelief. "Stop them." But the guards were blind and deaf in the interference field. Stumbling like shadows, Jack scooped Lyrie up and bolted toward the tree line. Lungs burning. Terrain shifting under his boots. The EMP had bought maybe 30 seconds less if Prayton Tech recovered faster than human calculations predicted. Branches lashed his face as they plunged into the forest's neon gloom. Behind, distant shouts echoed metallic and enraged. He pressed the transmitter on his wrist. 1 short pulse. Then 2. A code. For a moment. Nothing. Then the night air shivered as the low hum of a transport engine approached. A sleek Talon craft broke through the treetops, its hull shimmering with adaptive camouflage. The side hatch hissed open before the landing struts even touched ground. Atara stood in the doorway, armored in dark silver, hair bound back, eyes bright with fury and fear. "Jack," she shouted. "Hurry." He passed Lyrie into her arms and turned to face the pursuit. 3 Prayton soldiers burst from the smoke. Weapons rebooted, light crackling along their blades. "Get her inside," Jack barked. He spun toward the nearest soldier, ducked beneath a swing, and rammed the butt of his modified wrench into the alien's ribs. Sparks flared. The second came from his flank. Jack threw the EMP scanner like a discus. It hit squarely on the chest plate. Discharged. 1 last pulse. And sent the alien sprawling. Nevin emerged behind them, sword drawn, face twisted in rage. "You think to shame me in my own territory." "Already did." Jack shot back. Nevin lung. Jack sidestepped, grabbed the wrist, twisted, and used the alien's momentum to drive him into the dirt. The blade skittered away, carving sparks against stone. From the transport, Lord Talon's voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "Enough." The clearing filled with light as Talon guards descended. Armor, reflecting the craft's glow. The contrast made Nevin's gold trim look cheap. Lord Talon himself stepped out, flanked by drones projecting shimmering sigils of authority. "You have violated the Treaty of Houses," it declared. "Kidnapping a noble child is treason." Nevin struggled. "Defiance, even in defeat." "You have no proof." A drone projected a holographic recording above the clearing every moment of the encounter, captured and time-stamped. Nevin's demand. His threats. His face clear in the transmission. The crowd of guards murmured. Even his own soldiers froze. "Your house is finished," Talon said quietly. Nevin's response was pure desperation. He lunged again, knife hidden in his sleeve, but Jack was ready. He stepped aside, grabbed the arm, and flipped him effortlessly, pinning him face down. "Stay down," Jack said, voice like iron. The guards closed in. Restraint snapped around Nevin's wrists, glowing blue as they sealed. Talon turned to Jack. "Once again, human. You bring resolution where others bring ruin. House Talon owes you more than honor. It owes you survival." Jack, breathing hard, nodded toward Lyrie, who clung to Atara's arm. "Just wanted the kid safe. That's all." Atara stepped forward, eyes luminous in the ship's light. "You risked your life for her. For us." He met her Chaza. Wouldn't have been the first bad decision that turned out right. Her lips quirked, but emotion blurred it into something softer. "You have a gift for understatement." Talon's guards lifted Nevin and the others aboard a secondary transport. The forest fell quiet again, save for the distant hum of engines. When the Talon craft ascended, Lyrie pressed close to Jack's side. "You saved me again," she said, voice small but sure. "Guess that makes us even." She smiled. "Not yet." Atara's hand found his, fingers interlacing without hesitation. Her armor was cool, but her touch steady. "You could have been killed," she whispered. "But I wasn't," he said simply. "Takes more than a few angry nobles to kill a stubborn human." She tilted her head, eyes glimmering. "And what are you planning to do now that you've unsettled 2 houses and changed the course of our politics?" Jack grinned, exhausted but alive. "Honestly, I just want a shower and a decent cup of coffee." Atara laughed, a sound rare and startling in its warmth. "Then perhaps you should stay long enough for both." He looked out through the viewport as the horizon tilted away beneath them, the forest shrinking into threads of light. Somewhere down there, the border marker still glowed blue and red, intertwined, the fragile proof that 2 worlds could meet and not destroy each other. Jack squeezed Atara's hand once more, the pulse of their connection sinking in a rhythm that felt suspiciously like hope. Morning light spilled across the terraces of House Talon like melted silver. 3 moons hung low over the horizon, their reflections woven through the estate's water channels so that the entire complex seemed to breathe with celestial rhythm. Jack Harmon leaned on the balcony rail outside his new workshop, a space 3 times the size of his old garage, and watched the alien sunrise scatter color through glass spires. The air carried a faint hum from the gardens, where pollen drifted like slow snowfall, and distant laughter echoed. That laughter belonged to Lyrie. She was kneeling beside a table strewn with parts. Visor on, hands moving with confident precision as she calibrated a tiny drone. Every few seconds, she tilted her head to listen to its pulse before adjusting the frequency by touch alone. "She's getting better," Jack said quietly. Atara appeared beside him, wrapped in a robe of pale gold that caught the dawn light. Her silver-flecked eyes softened as she followed his gaze. "Better, she's surpassing you. Yesterday, she rebuilt one of our security drones from scraps and convinced it to project fireworks." Jack grinned. "Should have seen that coming. She's got my habit of turning work into chaos." "You gave her more than vision, Jack," Atara said. "You gave her curiosity." He turned toward her, brushing a strand of violet hair from her cheek. "And you gave me something too, belonging." Their life together had begun as scandal and turned into inevitability. The galaxy loved its gossip. House Talon's widowed lady, entwined with a human mechanic, but scandal fades faster than success. And after Jack exposed House Praeton's conspiracy and rescued Lyrie, Even the council's whispers softened to admiration. Now he wasn't merely the Talon Ven. The title had become his identity, carved into the delicate pendant that still hung around his neck, a mark of both duty and love. In the month since, his workshop had become a crossroads. Human improvisation, mixed with Nalarian precision half-mechanical prototypes, half artworks of light. Apprentices from multiple species came daily engineers, dreamers, and misfits drawn by the legend of the human who fixed what the universe declared impossible. That morning, he oversaw them from a balcony above. One young Praxian tested a stabilizer disk. Another Dralaxian adjusted energy relays with her many-jointed fingers. It was messy, loud, alive, and it felt exactly right. Atara watched the scene below. Amusement, touching her voice. You've turned our noble estate into a workshop. Correction, Jack said. A workshop that throws great parties. She laughed. A low melodic sound that still startled him sometimes. Your species measures affection through humor. I'm beginning to understand why. He slid an arm around her waist. You picked it up fast. Beneath their banter lay something deeper, a rhythm they'd learned to share over late nights and quiet mornings. Theirs was a relationship of exploration, discovery, patience. Nalarian physiology differed, but they'd found the bridge between warmth and coolness, language and silence, instinct and ritual. It was love expressed in invention, not rebellion. Below, Lyrie lifted her latest creation, a smaller, sleeker visor with ornate latticework. Jack, she called. Version 3.1 is online. He descended the steps 2 at a time, Atara following. 3.1, he asked, crouching beside her. Lyrie grinned. I added adaptive contrast filters and a link to the household net. Now I can see the estate's energy flows. Atara raised a brow. You gave a 10-year-old access to our defense grid. Jack winced playfully. Technically, she gave herself access. Lyrie beamed, clearly proud. You said seeing differently is an advantage. Jack ruffled her violet hair. Remind me to be more specific next time. They stood together in the workshop's filtered light, 3 figures from 3 worlds. Bound, not by blood but by choice. A chime sounded from the estate's comms panel, Lord Talon's voice. Still stern but softened by age and new respect. Preparations are complete. The council requests your presence in the central hall. Atara glanced at Jack, ready to face them again. As ready as a grease monkey in royal boots can be. The hall was vast, transformed for ceremony. Representatives of multiple houses filled the tiers, their robes a tapestry of alien color. At the dais, Lord Talon presided, and beside him stood the High Council's emissary, a towering being of crystalline lattice who spoke for the interspecies treaties. Lord Talon addressed the assembly. When the boundary between houses was nearly broken, a human saved. Not just my kin, but our honor. His actions reminded us that courage and compassion are not bound to bloodlines. It is time our alliances reflect that truth. A murmur of assent rippled through the room. The emissary stepped forward. Henceforth, interspecies collaboration will no longer be a privilege, but a right under the Council's charter. House Talon's hybrid workshop will serve as model for cooperative innovation. Applause rose, not perfunctory this time, but genuine. Jack bowed slightly. Guess I'm officially out of excuses not to fix things. Lyrie tugged his sleeve. You already did. He looked down at her eyes, bright behind the visor. Smile, radiant. Nah, kid. I just started. Later, after the hall emptied and diplomacy gave way to quiet, Jack and Atara returned to the terrace. The moons had shifted higher, painting her skin in silver. She leaned against him, fingers tracing idle patterns on his sleeve. "You realize," she said, "you've rewritten the relationship between two houses." "Accidentally," Jack said. "I was aiming for fixing one kid's eyesight." "Intent is small," she murmured. "Consequences are vast." He smiled. "Spoken like a noble." "Spoken like your student," she corrected. They stood in silence for a long moment. The sound of wind through the glowing trees below. Then she tilted her head, studying him. "What are you thinking about?" "Back home, we had a saying," Jack said. "The universe doesn't owe you understanding it, just gives you the tools to find it. I think I finally get what that means." Atara brushed her thumb along his jaw. "And what does it mean?" "That sometimes the tool is a child who refuses to give up, or a woman who teaches patience to a man who's never had it. Or maybe it's just a visor that turns light into love." Her laughter mingled with the wind. "Pudik. For a mechanic." He shrugged. "Guess even machines can learn romance." They kissed, unhurried, with the calm certainty of those who had already survived their story's storm. Above them, the house's twin banners, one blue, one silver, fluttered in the soft alien breeze. Beyond the estate, new construction glittered, a joint academy rising on the border where two houses once drew weapons. Children of different species would soon learn side by side, building not divisions but devices, proof that collaboration could outshine conquest. As the stars brightened overhead, Jack whispered, "You think they'll remember us?" Atara smiled against his shoulder. "No, they'll remember what we built." He looked down at the courtyard, where Leary's small drone traced patterns of light across the night air, spelling words in the universal alphabet. "See differently." Jack squeezed Atara's hand and watched the letters fade into the stars. Sometimes, being human wasn't a disadvantage at all. It was the galaxy's greatest invention.